Hi, I'm Jessica Houtz. I'm an editor with Cell Reports at Cell Press, and I'm speaking with Dr. Shin-ichiro Imai. He's
Yes.
from the Departments of Developmental Biology and Medicine at Washington University in St. Louis. Thank you very much for speaking with me.
Thank you for inviting me to this interview.
Yes. So you kicked us off last night with the first talk of this Aging and Senescence Symposium, and you gave a really nice overview of the last 40 years of aging research, with a particular focus on the role of communication between tissues and the role of this factor NAD that we know decreases with age. So I wondered if you could just talk with us a little bit about your career path and how you arrived at your current line of research. And why is NAD so important? What is it doing?
Yes. So actually, my aging and longevity research started back in my medical school days. I started my first experiment back in 1987, already 80 years ago, almost close to 40 years. Oh my gosh. But anyway, so since then I have been carrying my big interest in aging and lifespan, regulation in mammals. And then, when I was a postdoc at MIT in Lenny Garante's lab, Lenian and I myself made a very important discovery about a family of interesting enzymes called sirtuins, and which have an NAD-dependent protein deacylase or deacylase activities. That's basically the starting point when we all got interested in NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Of course, this, the molecule NAD is almost like an essential currency for any life forms. So, because this family of enzymes, the sirtuins, are important for the regulation of aging and longevity in many different species, including mammals, and they absolutely require NAD. We start looking into how NAD is doing, to support certain activity. But then, in my lab, we are the first who recognize this age-dependent decline in NAD levels, at least in the mice first, and then we got interested in this because it looks like this decrease really dampened in certain activity, and then of course causing certain pathophysiological problems in body functions. So that's basically the starting point, back around in 2008. And since then, our lab has been working on NAD metabolism, and also, of course, the regulatory dynamics of the aging process per se, and also lifespan determination. But turns out, what we come to realize is that NAD regulation is actually mediated by very specific tissue-tissue or inter-organ communications. And then we actually also came to realize, such inter-organ communications also play a very important role in aging longevity control. So that's, how we, run into this, NAD business.
Okay. If you had to say, is there a particular organ that you think is most responsible for the source of NAD or where it's signaling to mediate the effects that it has on aging and physiology?
Yes, I would say, excuse me, I would say it's the hypothalamus, within the brain. There are some very specific subsets of neurons located in the hypothalamus. And those neurons tends to require very specific NAD biosynthetic pathways. And they, those neurons usually regulate a specific target in the peripheral tissues. For example, like the one subset of neurons that we actually looked into is called PPP1R70 neurons. I know it's in a kind of like a lengthy name, but these PPP1R70 neurons are located in the area of the hypothalamus called DMH, dorsal-medial hypothalamus. Specifically regulates the function of white adipose tissue. And then this regulation is mediated by the sympathetic nervous system. So, when you mess up and then the function of these neurons, basically the white adipose tissue cannot function properly, and including like a lipolysis and also secretion of very important NAD biosynthetase enzyme called E-NAMPT, extracellular NAMPT. So then, the E-NAMPT goes back to the hypothalamus and then support the NAD biosynthesis in those neurons. So basically, there is a very interesting and important feedback loop between the hypothalamus and also white adipose tissue. And this, maintenance of this feedback loop is the key to contract the effect of time, which is basically aging, and also when they maintain the lifespan as well.
Yeah, that was some very nice work. I believe that was in Cell Metabolism, actually.
Yes, one of your sister journals.
Yes. So that was some nice crosstalk that you were seeing between adipose tissue and the brain and how that is contributing to the function of those neurons.
Yes.
I'm curious if there's feedback from other tissues that might also be contributing to function.
So, exactly, and that's an extremely important point. And now we are interested in the second, feedback loop between the hypothalamus and also skeletal muscle. And in this case, there is another subset of neurons involved in this regulation, and those neurons are located in the different area within the hypothalamus called lateral hypothalamus, or LH. And those neurons have a very specific characteristics of having a very specific transporter for the important NAD intermediate called NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. And then those neurons actually regulate the skeletal muscle structure and function through sympathetic nervous system. But now what we are getting, actually the manuscript is under review, but we found a very specific myokine secreted from skeletal muscle in response to the signal from the hypothalamus. And this specific myokine actually goes back to another subset of neurons within the hypothalamus and then regulates the very robust circadian rhythm of core body temperature, which really affect the lifespan regulation. So I think, I would say all of the tissues and organs that we have are communicating with each other. But I would say the hypothalamus is the high-order control center of aging in mammals, and they communicate with a bunch of peripheral tissues. But interestingly, from the hypothalamus to the peripheral tissues, branches are regulated or mediated by sympathetic nervous system. But from each of the peripheral tissues back to the hypothalamus, independent humoral factors seems to be a key regulators.
That's very nice. So you have sort of this interplay where this region, the dorsal medial hypothalamus, seems to be playing a central role in regulating these peripheral tissues, which then each kind of help fine-tune that central process again.
Yes. So now we are characterizing those like a key mediators, and the idea we are now coming up with is that we can use those key mediators for each of inter-organ communications, and then contract the effect of aging and also keeping our health as long as possible. So that's interventional approach is now called inter-organ communication management, or IOCOM as an acronym.
Yeah, it's very nice. In the last few minutes that we have, I'm curious, so are NAD boosters, are they a silver bullet for aging? Are we able to live forever now?
Yes, I know now hundreds and thousands of people are interested in NAD boosting compounds, and such as NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, or nicotinamide riboside, NR. And I wouldn't call them like a silver bullet or magic pills, because there isn't certain interesting aspects those compounds can convey, but those are not really almighty compounds. But of course those are particularly NMN, I would say, is the most promising anti-aging compound in the world right now, and based on the scientific evidence, I would say. But now, including our group, there are many groups now trying to conduct hardcore human clinical trials on NMN. Our clinical trial results have already been published. And it actually is really interesting because in postmenopausal and pre-diabetic obese women, the NMN significantly increases the skeletal muscle insulin sensitivity by 25%, which can be achieved by 10% weight loss or the 12 weeks long treatment with the former diabetic drug and trogritazone. So it's clinically relevant, but can we actually see more benefits by giving NMN? That is actually something we need to see based on clinical trials.
Very interesting. Well, thank you very much for taking time to speak with me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.